All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Jeff Scott. I tried to connect for the first 10 minutes or so this morning using um, Teams and was unable to. So I was going to go through Camtasia, but I decided that instead I would reboot. And once I did reboot, I am able to get in. I was getting these connection errors. Basically, it said I was having trouble connecting, and then it would say, sorry, we cannot connect you. All right. But I was able to get in. So let me just grab this message that I sent out there earlier. Just grab this. All right. All right. So let's get going. Okay. So again, welcome to day 41. We literally have 3 weeks left in class. Hopefully everybody realizes that. All right, let me get rid of this and get rid of this and bring this up. There we go. So again, today is day 41, Monday, the 31st of July. All right. Now, before I even get started with this, because I sent this out this morning, but before I do, please be cognizant of the fact that if you are going to send me in or turn me in late work, you have to send me an email and let me know. Let me know what you turned in, etc. What some of you have been doing is saying, I've got this work and I turned it in, and I look on your GitHub repo and I can't find it, or I don't know where it is, or you put it in some really strange place. All right. Okay. Now, um, I think only one or two people in the class have turned in the homework that was due last night. All right, now I think people may have been struggling with problem number 3 on the link worksheet. That was the Lab 03 student grades problem. All right, so as it says there, I've decided to do the following. First, I'm going to change the due date for your chapters 17 to 19 written tests and the link worksheet to Wednesday at midnight. Secondly, I'm going to do the link worksheet problem number 3 with you as a class on Wednesday. As it says there, this will not be saved as a link repository. All right. Now, if you've already turned in the homework, you can either leave it as it is if you're happy with it, or update it and turn it in by midnight on Wednesday. Either way. All right. This should have said today, Monday. I don't know where the word Thursday got in there, but it did. Today is Monday, the 31st. As it says there, we're going to complete the C# MySQL GUI app that we worked on last week. It's totally working. I have updated the repo, and the updated repo is up there. All right, I worked on it this weekend and got it to work. After we get done with that, we're going to talk about SQL Server, which is another relational database management system. And we're going to create what I call an SQL Server tester. And we're going to use the Muroc MMA Books database with that. We're going to use that because that's the one that comes with your book. All right. Once we get done with both of those, we're going to go over the final project and the ePortfolio requirements again. I want to make sure people are up to date, cool with everything. Now, as it says here then, for the rest of the week, we're going to finish up the book. Tomorrow, we will go over chapter 20, which is a pretty long chapter. And afterwards, we'll do extra exercise 20-1. Then on Wednesday, we'll go over chapter 21 and do exercise 21-1. And I'll also go over that link problem with you. Finally, on Thursday, we'll go over chapter 22, and I'll do at least exercise 22-1, and if there's time, 22-2 as well. Now, it doesn't say it on here, but I'm saying it now. You do not have to turn in any homework for chapters 20, 21, or 22. I want to say that again. You do not have to turn in any of these homeworks, these extra exercises. There is no homework for chapters 20, 21, and 22. I'm doing this because some of you in this class next semester will be taking the AWD1100 Database-Driven Web Development 2 class. Some of you won't be taking it until probably fall of 2024, but that's okay. All right. And all of you will need to understand databases in more depth and breadth of coverage than we've talked about them thus far. That's why I'm going over these last three chapters. I would strongly suggest that even at the end of the semester, that you keep your textbook. All right. It's a great resource. Now, if you don't agree and you want to get rid of it, you're going to do that anyway. All right. That's always your call, of course. So again, the chapters 17 through 19 written tests and the link worksheet, that'll be the last homework and written tests you'll have for the rest of the semester. They'll be due by midnight on Sunday. In addition, as it says there, your final project will be due 2 weeks from tomorrow by midnight, Tuesday, 8/15/23. Your ePortfolio will be due 2 weeks from Wednesday, 8/16/2023. That'll give me time because what I'm going to be doing then on Wednesday and on Thursday is grading everything. All right. And if for some reason something you turned in was incomplete or whatever, all right, then it would still give me time to turn it back to you and hopefully have you get it back to me. All work is due by midnight. You know, the latest I can take any work is midnight, 8/16. I'm actually taking off Friday, the 17th, or the 18th, I guess it is. That's going to be a vacation day for me. And I'm off the next week as well. And the reason I'm off is I only have that week between classes. So I want to try to squeeze in a vacation someplace. So again, you can see all this. We'll go over it again. But again, if you're turning in any late work, please make sure you let me know about it. All right. Okay. So with all that said, let me close this down and let me bring up what we were working on. Oops, what we were working on last week. All right. In fact, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it like this. We were working on this thing called MySQL Con, and it was our connection thing. This is the one that we built together last week. Now, what I want to do is I want to go in and I want to run it. All right. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come up into here and make sure that I have XAMPP running. And I'm going to go into my admin. Whoops, I don't have it running. Apache, and there's MySQL. So now I'm going to bring up in here, and you know this already, but I'm going to bring up PHP My Admin. All right. We're going to be working here still because this is the one we did last week with this Acme widget database, and in particular with the employee table. So right now I've got 12 records in here. Okay. I changed all of the names and stuff, and I'll let you know why later. All right. It was very hard because I had Scott in there for almost every last name. So doing searches and stuff like that didn't make a lot of sense. All right. So let me close this. I'm just going to close that table. So the table's not open right now. It's not running, but I want to come in here and I want to show you now how this works. All right. So if I come in here now, you'll notice this is empty because that's just the way that it's set up. So if I come through here, and the last person I put in here was somebody named Benson. So if I put a B in here, right here, I got to run it. So if I come in here and put in a B, so notice I'm running it now. There's all my records that you just saw. All right. So this is everybody who's in here. Okay. But if I come in here and put in a B, notice how it changes. I get a last name of Brown, a last name of Black, and a last name of Benson. I only get the people with a B in their name. If on the other hand, I put in a T, notice I get Scott, Smith, and it looks like Smith is in there twice. I didn't know that, but that's okay. All right. And finally, if I come in and put in an S, you'll see who comes in there. All right. So the search actually now is working. All right. So let's look at the rest of it. So when I have nothing in there, it shows me all of the records. All right. So let's just run through this. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to click on, I'll pick on here, Mandy Black. So I'm going to click right there and notice all of Mandy Black's stuff comes in here. All right. So I'm going to go to update, but what do I want to, we're going to update her name to Madison, her last name to Blackstone. I'm just making all this up. Let's just put Street ST here. And let's say that she is in, I don't know, Hollywood, California. I have no idea what their zip code is, but we're going to put it 45678. And her phone number, we're going to change to 800-333-4455. Her department code will change to a 1, and her salary will change to 99,999.99. So I think you all would agree we've changed virtually everything in here. The only thing you're really not allowed to change is this. Even if you attempt to change it, it doesn't take it anyway. So I'm going to click update in here. All right. And now when you go back and you look, hopefully you can see this, but I'm thinking maybe you can't because it's a little bit hard to see. All right. So let's come back into here. Not there, sorry. Into here. And let's do our select star from employee. All right. And there is, now it's Madison Blackstone, 1212 Bourbon Street, Hollywood, California, 45678, 800-333-1456. And now Department 1 and a salary of $99,999.99. So it appears, at least to me, as though all of our changes worked. So if we go back in here again, that means we were able to go in and do an update. Let's look at the next one. All right, so let's say that Madison has now left us. All right, so I'm going to click delete. And it says, are you sure you want to delete this employee record? If I say no, I just stay there. Oh, well, that's interesting. Not allowed to change the connection string property. All right, so there must still be an error in here. But let's do this anyway. All right. So I'm going to go to Madison. There she is. Delete. Do I want to change it? To delete it rather? Yes. She's now not in there. And if I go back into here where I just was and I run this again, you should notice there's no Madison in there anymore. All right. I'm going to make one more change because I've got Gene Smith in there twice, which doesn't make a boatload of sense. Could be two different Gene Smiths. It's not a problem. All right. But let's just update one of those records. All right. Just because, again, we can. So let's go into this one right here and we'll update her name to Joanne Johnson. All right. I'm going to click update and it says employee ID has already been defined. Well, what does that mean? All right. If I come in here and do an update, there must be something wrong in my update statement. So we're going to look at that in just a moment. It's interesting because I ran all this stuff the other day and everything worked fine. And now I'm getting that error again. But when I stop the run and run it again, all right, it's still Gene Smith. So let's try the other one. And we're going to try to make this. First of all, let's get that B out of there. That's fine. And again, Joanne Johnson. And attempt to update. Now it took it. I have said this to you before that working with databases can be worky. Okay. I don't know what the problem was with that. I have absolutely no idea. If I click clear, it does clear everything. All right. So all of that appears to be working. I have errors in here. You just saw them. All right. But let's take a look at what we do have in here. All right. So I'm going to take this from the top. I'm going to just take my good sweet old time on this. And then we'll go on, all right, to SQL Server. All right. So here's the program. Again, you've got the program. This is the exact same thing that I went and put out on GitHub over the weekend. All right. Notice we put in a minimum department code and a maximum department code because we only have 7 departments. So they must be between 1 and 7. The minimum salary is 0 if the person is a volunteer. The maximum salary is $1 million. Again, these are all arbitrary values. All right. Now, last week when we went through this, I gave you some URLs, but I really didn't talk much about what the connection is, what the MySQL command is, etc. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, the SQL reader, etc. What you're going to notice in just a few minutes when we go and we transition over from using MySQL to using SQL Server is that some things are going to change. All right. What do I mean by that? All right. Well, MySQL things, as you can see, start with MySQL. All right. Because it has to do with the relational database management system you are working with. All right. And what I've been trying to do, because, let's face it again, we've only got a limited number of days that we're working on this. Is I've been trying to show you how to interact with a MySQL database, but do it in what I consider to be the most intuitive manner possible. So, yeah, you'll learn some stuff, but there's a lot of other ways we can do what we've been working on so far. So we've got a MySQL connection in here, a MySQL command, a MySQL data reader, a MySQL data adapter. And you'll notice when we put this up here, all right, there is right there, you can see the fact that there is, this is the internal program documentation on this stuff. All right. Eventually, we're going to come in here and we're going to set up our connection string. What you're going to notice in just a few minutes when we transition over to SQL Server is the way we're going to do it is going to be different. All right. And you'll notice after, so we've got localhost. All this means is that we're running it on our machine. And that should make sense to all of you. Since we are going through, since we are going through PHP we are logged into PHP as root. You are automatically. We have no password. And this is the database we are working with. Now, there are other ways we could have done this as well. In the past, I have shown students things like MySQL Workbench, but I think that XAMPP that we used is the easiest, most intuitive way of doing things. And that's why I chose this. All right. Okay. So in our load event, and we call this from not just the load event, but from virtually everything we're trying to do in here. Okay. And that is we set up a connection string. So as it says in this comment right here on line 59, once we run this, okay, once we run that, we are setting our connection string equal to this. And again, this is not the only way of doing this. This is a way of doing this. All right. The names that you choose, this is almost always server. I don't think I've ever seen it as anything else. I could have called this user ID. I could have called this password. It doesn't matter. All right. It really and truly doesn't matter. All right. So let's see. But those are the things that we set up here. We set our server equal to localhost. We set our username equal to root. We set our password equal to nothing. And we let the system know that the database we were working score widget database. So whenever we, virtually the first thing we're going to do almost all the time is set this connection string. That's what we're doing here. After we do that, and again, you can see, again, I put in a bunch more links in here. So if you don't like, all right, what I've gone over, I guess, so far, some of these links are from dev.mysql.com. All right. But I've noticed that some of the dev.mysql.com, I don't know if they're switching versions or what's going on, but I got a lot of page not found errors. So I started to go out to this devart.com.connect MySQL because in there they had a bunch of what I consider to be pretty good URLs also. So this command text, this is the command we want to run against our database. You by now, hopefully at least, you are at least have somewhat of a comfort level of what that's doing. That's saying retrieve every record from the employee table. Okay. Now, this program that we're running here, let's be honest, it's limited in what you can do. What do I mean by that? First of all, it's only working with one of the three tables. I took the most complex table. The department table is pretty simple. It's only got two fields in it, a department code and a department name. The state table is a pretty simple table. It only has two fields in it, a state code and a state name. Well, taking this employee table, it's got like 10 fields in it. All right. So I picked what I considered at least to be the hardest, whatever you want to call that. All right. So next we've got this SQL reader. And notice what that does is it takes that command that we set up right here and it executes it. And for lack of better words, SQL reader holds what's called a result set. So it holds the result of that query. All right. After we do that, we load that into a data table. All right. So that we're able to do different actions with that. Then once we've done that, we close the reader object that we've created and we close our connection to the database. Now, a natural question right here then would be, okay, fine. But if you're doing all this stuff, why are you constantly opening and closing the database connection? All right. And it's the reason really is twofold. Every time you're going to be doing different actions on a database, quite often you will be closing the connection, but even more so than that, in an institution of any size, what you will be doing in an institution of any size, what you will be doing is your database will be on a database server somewhere. You won't be the only one using it. All right. There could be tens, hundreds, thousands, or more of users. So when you're done connecting, okay, you close that connection so that other people can open it. All right. The last thing we're doing in here is we're saying the data source for our data grid view. And remember, the data grid view is what's down here. But I'm saying the data source for that is going to be what we just loaded into the table, which was our SQL reader, which was the result of running this query. All right. So hopefully all of that made at least a little bit of sense. And then we've got our different operations. The first thing that we have, the first button. So if you look in here, we've got the add, the update, and the delete. Now, this program right now is allowing what I would call full CRUD functionality. And again, CRUD is an acronym that stands for create, and that's when we add, read, which is what we get up, when we are running that select statement, update, and delete. All right. So it is allowing us full CRUD capability. Now, when we click the button to add a record, play computer here, it's going to call attempt to add record. So it's going to set that connection string that we've already looked at right here. Okay. And then inside of a try catch block, and you oft times do this, if this fails, because either we had a bad connection or the machine's down or whatever, all right, then you're just basically going to come all the way down to here and you're going to print out error and you'll show what the error is. All right. Now I call this if is valid data here. You should all know what this means because I brought in the validator class. There's the validator class. I took that right from your book. So this was the if is valid data. So what is this doing? Well, again, I tried to comment it pretty much so you could see what was going on. First thing it says there is validate all 10 input fields are not empty. Next, validate that an employee ID and an employee department code are both integers. And finally, validate that the salary is between 0 and 1 million. So we used pretty much what we have been doing. I made some changes and I'll explain those in a second. We'll call success. We're assuming is good, but we've got this error message string, which is set to the empty string, so that if we get errors, we're just going to keep saying error message plus equal. We're going to keep adding to it. All right. And that bool result is something I added also. Why? You'll see it in a moment. So, like I said, I tried to come in here and put in a lot of documentation. So validate the presence. In other words, validate that there's something in the ID. All right. So if it's true, this isn't going to be adding anything. And if it's false, it's going to be basically adding an error message in there. All right. That validator is present. Remember what that does is that'll come in here and it'll say, for example, ID is a required field. All right. I'm not going to go through that for every one because, again, that should just make sense. Then we do the same thing for the first name, for the last name, for the address, for the city, for the state, for the zip code, for the phone number, for the department code, and for the salary. That's all 10 of the fields that you see in here. All right. Then we get down, or that gets us down to line 213. And as it says right there, the next thing we want to do is validate that the value in the ID text box was a number. Now, I did not go over this with you because it would have involved a little bit of stuff we haven't really talked about yet. But technically, when we click add here, this employee ID field, okay, this technically should have been a label. And when you add a new record, we should have set it up, since it's an auto increment field, so that it automatically put the next thing in there. But that would have involved a lot more work and a lot of explanations of things that I just didn't think we needed to do in here right now. All right. You can do the same kind of thing as the auto increment. You can do the same kind of thing that you'll see after the break today when we start talking about SQL Server. All right. It's done differently, but it's the same kind of thing. All right. So we want to validate that the ID is numeric. There's going to be another validation we're going to make in just a second. We want to also validate that the department code is numeric. Remember, that's got to be between 1 and 7. Finally, we want to validate that the salary is a decimal. All right. Well, then we get down to here. So notice what I put in here. Validate that the value of the employee ID is greater than 0. That would be something you wouldn't normally even think you'd have to do. But since we're manually inputting the ID, I wanted to make sure that it was positive. Now, I could have allowed it to go in as a negative and just change the value, call absolute value or do something else. We could have done it that way. All right, so there are ways around this, but this is the way that I did it. So again, if the parsing already probably worked because we did it up here where we did the is in 32, but I'm parsing it anyway. So I've got a value that I can put it into, and that's the ID. So if that failed or the result is negative or 0, you must enter a positive ID. Then we do a similar thing for the department code. All right. Now you might say, why didn't you use the is within range? I am using that next for the salary. I could have written another is within range All right. If I wanted to, I could have done that, had an overloaded is within range, and had one that would handle decimal values and one that would handle integer values. I just did it like this. So again, we attempt to parse this into an integer, and we put the result, since it's a department code, into this global variable we call DC. This was a global variable called ID, that was the ID number, and this again was the global variable that we call DC for department code. We want to make sure not only that it works, but if it doesn't work, or it worked, but we put in a number that's less than 1, or it worked, but we put in a number that's greater than 7, then we give you that message. You must enter a department code between 1 and 7. Finally, we run from the validator class, we run the is within range. So you'll notice when you look in here that all of the is presents are validator dot, all 10 of those. But then we come down here and we're not using validator. This is in our is valid routine, but we're not using validator here. We're not using validator here. Okay. And we're not using it. Maybe that was it. I don't know. I guess so. So as always, if we had any errors, the error message won't be empty. So we're going to give a message box. You saw this. I ran this for you before. So you'll see again, if I put nothing in here and I click, for example, add, I get all of those errors that come up. I'm not going to read those to you. And as I start putting in stuff, all right, you'll notice that the number of errors so from what we had before, we've now got less errors. And it's starting with city and it's got state, etc. So you'll notice again, even less errors. And now it's down to phone. And again, now it's down to salary. It's a required field and it must be a valid value. All right. Finally, if I put in something that's out of range, must be between 0 and 1,000,000. All right. Now it looks like I've got all valid fields. So this should add Mike Montana should now be able to be added into here. And it says duplicate entry 777 for the primary key. I think I had one in there with that, but let's try. All right. Oh, I guess for some reason I'd already hit it. So he's in there twice. All right. Let's get rid of the 777. Delete. Yes. And there he is. Mike Montana. And again, if I do go back into here and I run this and I click go, there's Mike Montana. So there is definitely a communication that is taking place. All right. That should be obvious to you. There is a communication that is taking place. All right. Between MySQL, and in particular, MySQL that's running in PHP MyAdmin, and Visual Studio. The program is able to do the communication, which is exactly what I'm looking for. All right. All right. So again, in our add record routine. If this returned true, that means everything in there was valid. So there's not a lot more that we have to do then. There's an insert statement and there's an insert into, and look at in here, I have to put in the ID because we have to add an ID. That's our primary key. So we add an ID, a first name, a last name, an address, a city, a state, a zip code, a phone number, a department code, and a salary. And for the state, it's the state code. All right. And then in here, these are all the values. All right. Those are all the values that are in each one of the text boxes. Okay. Then this is attempting right here to run the query that we just set up in here using the connection that we opened up in here. All right. And then after we do that, we execute it. And you'll notice it's an execute reader. We are only reading right here. So we're setting that up. Okay. Once we put it in there. Why? Because this is, we're adding it. And if it doesn't work, we're just having an error message here. Now, if you look in here, I didn't really even need this. I put a finally in here so you could see that. We've talked a little bit this semester about the finally command, that when you have a try, you know this now. If all of this works, if everything in here works, we skip the catch. If something in here doesn't work, so if this fails, we jump to the catch and do this. And if it failed right here, we never go back and do this. But with a finally, whether the try succeeds and you do nothing in the catch, or something in the try fails and you do the catch, you always do this. All right. And then afterwards, we call upload data again. Why? Because that basically is redrawing what's in the data grid. All right. So that's the add. So we went over the add and the is valid data. So let's jump down and look at the last couple, which are the update and the delete. All right. Now, virtually every time I teach this class, I've got to go back and look through the documentation again because it's different always. Database. So when you click the update button, you call attempt to update record. Now, one thing I do want you to notice when you look in here, if you look at this command, you'll notice that what's missing in here is the employee ID. Because when we do this, allowing the user to please remember that the employee ID is our primary key. All right. It's more or less a kind of set it and forget it type of field. All right. So when we come in here, we again set up our connection string. Then again, we've got this try catch. And if it doesn't work, we're just doing that show message. That's it. All right. But when we come in here, what are we doing? Well, first, we are opening our connection. All right. Then I was playing around with this in here, but I didn't need this. So I left it in there. I probably should have just removed it. But we are setting up our command object using that connection. And then our command text is the update. When you do an update command in SQL, it's update followed by the name of the table, set, and then you can change as many fields as you want to. Now, you may look at this. Let me make it smaller so you can see all of it. Well, if I make it too small, you won't be able to see anything. Well, you can see how small that gets. But when we come in here, notice you'll see it says first name at first name, last name at last name, address at address, city at city. state code, zip, add zip, phone, add phone, department code, add department code, and salary, add salary. All right. What is that? Well, those are aliases, those at signs that we're going to set down below. But notice I only want to update it where there's a match. Well, why am I telling you this? There's a really important reason I'm telling you this. When I finally got this to work, I was working on it Saturday. When I finally got this to work, where I brought in somebody's record, okay? So this is what I did. Let me just show you. I ran it and I brought me up. All right. So I brought this up right here and I just made a couple changes. It's like I came here and changed it from Jeffrey. It was originally Jeff. So I changed it to Jeffrey. Okay. But I didn't have the where statement in there. I want to say that again. I didn't have the where statement in there. So I, not foolishly, stupidly, clicked update right here. And it changed every record that was in here because there wasn't a where clause. So they all became Jeff Scott with that address, etc. And that was just dumb. All right. It didn't change the employee IDs, but it changed the first name, last name, address, city, state code, zip, phone, department code, and salary for everybody in the database. And that's why I changed all these names around. Okay. All right. And again, the reason I'm telling you that is that just to stress the importance when you're doing this of having a where clause whenever you do either an update or a delete. Because if you don't put in a where clause, it updates every record or it deletes every record. And the chances of that being what you want are very remote at best. Up all these aliases at the at salary, etc. But the system doesn't know what those mean. So we set them all up in here. Now you'll notice if you look in there, what's back? The employee ID. But you say, I didn't use the employee ID. Yes, I did. That's what got used in here. Now, there's nothing saying that these alias names that are in here, all right, they're known as parameters. And notice we're using add with value. So what it's saying is this is what we're using, but we're calling it this in our query. This is what we're using, but we're calling it this in our query, etc. I didn't have to call them at first name. I could have just called it FN for first name, etc. We could have done that. But what I've been trying to do in here is to take this and literally make it as self-documenting as possible. Even though there's a lot of documentation in here, there's a lot to be said for when you're writing code to make your code be self-documenting also. All right. Then also notice what we're running in here is an execute non-query. All right. We ran an execute query when we did the select, but we do a non-query when we do an update or a delete. All right. Because what happens in there is it's not going to show us information. It's just going to show us a number or a message that says something like, that the update worked or the delete worked, etc. So you always do the execute non-query in there. And if you want a little more on that than I just gave you, you can follow the track towards that URL right there. After we're done, we close our connection and we upload to rewrite or reshow our data grid view. That's all the upload data thing is doing, is it's redrawing the great data grid view. If we had an error, we're doing this. Finally, the easiest one probably is the delete. Now, Sometimes what's going to happen is when you do this after we set the connection string, and again, it's in a try catch, I added all this stuff in there. Look. All right, the dialogue result is said, are you sure you want to delete this employee record? It's probably a good idea. That, right? It's probably a good idea to do that. Just in case you've selected the wrong record. Oh, that's not the one I meant to delete. All right. But if you did choose it, it's gone. Now, I do want to mention to you that what a lot of companies do is rather than, they never delete their data. All right, but let's say that this was a customer that's no longer going to be a customer. The place went out of business, let's say. A lot of times what will happen is you will take that information, and rather than taking it and putting it as shown right there, all right, just removing it, you put it into another table, maybe even another database where you log everything that's ever happened. All right. And that you can do that. I mean, that's for a lot of reasons. Even though the company may have gone out of business, maybe they still owe you money. Maybe you want it for historical reasons. There's a lot of reasons that you might do that. And again, we've got another execute here non-query. All right. And that's going to run this query. And again, you'll notice we had to again add basically and say, hey, the ID is what we're calling @employee ID. So we can make this. And again, the where is paramount here. If we left the where out, that would remove every record we had. All right. And this basically is doing the deletion, believe it or not. Okay. Because this will do it. But basically what this is just doing is for lack of better words, it's kind of flagging everything that meets that criteria. And then this is saying, remove them at. So this is removing them here. This is removing them from the database. This is removing them from the data grid view. All right. Hopefully that made at least a little bit of sense. All right. Then we had our clear. And you saw there was a little shortcut in here for clear, as opposed to writing in there 10 times. txt id.text equal double quote, txt first name.text equal double quote, etc., all the way through txt salary.text equal double quote. We just put a for each in here and we're saying, hey, loop through this. For each control you find, if that particular control is a text box, clear out whatever was in it. So this is handling all 10 of these. And then this is handling that one right here. And our exit is just the exit that we've been using. Okay. Finally, the other thing that's in here, this right here, this cell click, this is making sure that every time we click on a cell, that it is going and it's grabbing everything, all that the contents for that particular record, and it's writing it to the text boxes. Again, we've got this in a try catch. When you are working with databases, inevitably something will fail. All right, I'm just telling you that's just the way it works. Something will fail. All right. And then there's our, so this is our search function right here on line 447. This says basically if the last name is like anything we put in. And notice we put it in text changed. So notice if I come in here and I run this, I don't know why that's still showing in there, but it is. There, now it's gone, I guess. Maybe I should have run clear first. If I put a B in here, now it finds Brown and it finds Benson. But if I put an R in here right now, all right, Benson is gone because Benson doesn't have an R in it. All right. So I've decided to put it in. I guess I should have made that text a little bit bigger. I didn't. I can do it on mine. Of course, if you want to do it on yours, you can, but of course you don't have to. But let's come in here and let's make that text bigger. Like, I think I made the rest of these 20, but I don't know. All right. Whoa, I made it not there. I don't want it 720. No, no, no. Or 205, I guess I made it so. There we go. So now it's 20. So there's S, and the last names are Jones, Scott, Larson, Smith, Johnson, and Benson. All right, notice if I put an O in there. Now we've got Larson, Johnson, and Benson. All right, if I put an N in there, it stays the same. If I add a G, they all go away. There's nothing with the name song in there. But if I go back to the beginning and I put in a B, nothing, E, nothing, N, now Benson's back. All right. So that what that is showing you right there, not a big thing, but it's that like command. Now, one thing I want to quickly do, you should do this. You don't have to, of course, but I'm going to go back into here. And before I call this upload data to fill in the data grid view, I'm going to call that clear the info search. That should make sure, I'm hoping at least, that when we run this now, that B cannot find column last name. Well, that's clear now. Okay. That should always make sure that when we start, there's nothing in there. Okay. So what I tried to do, and I did it as slow as I could basically, was to go through this program right here. It's not perfect. As you can see, it's breakable. It basically works, and there's a lot of good stuff in it for you to take a look at. Okay, again, this was the employee search. All right, so I'm going to do a file, save all, and I'm going to close this. Now, after the break, I want to show you the ending product of what we're going to make after the break. All right, and I gave it a stupid name on here, but that's okay. So let me bring this up. We're going to make something that looks like this. I don't think I've got the database set up right now. I'm going to look right now and see if I do, but I don't think that I do. I don't think I do. Don't worry about what this means. We're going to talk about all of it after the break. All right. I've got right now, I've got that it is 9:09. I'm going to take 11 minutes, and at 9:20, I'm going to come back and we're going to talk some SQL Server, and then we're going to build an application with SQL Server. So again, about 10 minutes. I'll see you then. I'll be back in just a few minutes. All right, it is 9:20, so I'm going to start back up again. We're going to change now from the MySQL Relational Database Management System into the SQL Server Relational Database Management System. The reason I'm bringing that up is I no longer have to have PHP running, and I also no longer really even need to have XAMPP running. Now, I can just stop it here and stop it here. Sometimes when you click quit, it locks up, gives you an error message like this, and maybe even two like this. If that happens, just do a Control-Alt-Delete, and that'll bring this up, and you want to choose Task Manager. Then you want to find where XAMPP is running and click on it and click End Task. Then everything is fine. All right, it doesn't happen all the time, but it does sometimes. So I'm about to go in this folder right now that is totally empty. I'm about to create a new project. Before I do, there's a few things that I want to mention to you. All right. The first is, if you remember at the beginning of the semester, we went in and we installed Visual Studio. Okay, nothing new there. We've been using it all semester. If you go in and you click the Windows Start button, which is in the bottom left corner of your computer, and you go down to the V's, you will find in there, amongst other things, Visual Studio Installer. If you click that, it's going to come up and look like this. I'm going to just have it be the whole screen. All right. Now, and it says, what do you want to do here? Well, what I'd like you to do is not change anything unless you have to, but modify button. And when we did this, this is what we did at the beginning of the semester. I asked you to check three things. I asked you to check .NET Desktop Development. This is the big one. This is what we've been using all semester. .NET Desktop Development. I also ask you to check ASP.NET and web development. That is especially important for those of you that are going to be taking the AWD1115 database-driven web development 2 class in fall. All right. But the other one that's important, the other one that's checked is the one down here where it says data storage and processing. If for some reason you didn't have it checked, I'll just grab one of these and I'll just click there. And you'll notice it says what it's adding there. And then it tells you down here you can install while downloading. Well, I don't want this one. But what I'm telling you is, at a minimum for this class, you want to make sure the .NET Desktop development is checked and the data storage and processing is checked. Now, you should have done that when we first installed Visual Studio at the beginning of the semester. If for some reason you did not do so, you should come back in and check that now. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do diddly as far as databases go. All right. Okay. All right. I'm not going to do anything else. There are updates and stuff that come with Visual Studio. I'm not going to do any of that right now. All right. But let's talk for just a moment about SQL Server. You may or you may not remember, I don't know, must have been, I'd say somewhere around a week ago, I sent you an email. And let's see, chapter 17. And let's see, this was that. No, this is what I sent you last weekend. No, I didn't send that out. Don't even worry about this. So let's see, updated GUI app. This is what I sent out Friday. I guess it's Friday that I fixed the MySQL connection, but earlier, we'll find it in just a second. Let's see. So I guess this is from Tuesday the 25th. So I guess it was a week ago tomorrow. Okay. Boy, I send out a lot of emails. All right. And what it had in here was the sales orders database, which we really haven't even used, the worksheets for MySQL that we went over in class, but what, all right. And that is this one that's right here. If you have to go in and install, I mean, what should have happened when you checked that box I showed you before is you should have in there SQL Server. All right. But what you don't have is SQL Server Management Studio. So let's pretend for just a second that you're just totally confused. I just confused the heck out of you right now. And you're like, I don't even have any idea. I went and looked in here and I didn't see any database stuff, etc. So how would you know? Well, if you go down here, notice I've got an older version. I've got Microsoft SQL Server 2019. If you installed yours at the beginning of the semester, you probably have Microsoft SQL Server 2022, and that's okay. I've got an older version. You'll have a newer one. That's fine. Now, what you'll need, what you probably will have then will be a folder that says Microsoft SQL Server 2019. What you don't get, what you do not get by default, is this folder that says Microsoft SQL Server Tools. And there's a tool in there we need, this one down here, that's called Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio, which typically it's given the acronym SMMS. So if you don't have that, so like I said, let's just say for a second, you're totally host. You're like, I don't think I have anything databases. Well, you can always check from the way I just showed you. But the other thing that you can do if you want to or need to do that is you can always type in install Microsoft SQL Server 2022. All right. And if you put that in, if you go down to, I think even the first one here, SQL Server Downloads Microsoft. Don't do this if you've already got it in there, of course. But you'll go down and let's see. Just the developer version. Just click the download now button. It'll take a while. It's pretty big. It's probably at least a gig. All right. So let's say though that you did have SQL Server, but you don't have that MMS, the SQL Server Management Studio that I just mentioned. Well, then again, you can come in here and install Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio right there. All right. And again, you can click the one right here that says download SQL Server Management Studio. All right. And there's a download SMMS. I think there's even a there right here, free download. All right. And you can click it and get it from there. Why will you need that? I'm going to show you that in just a moment. All right. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start up a new project. So, oops, don't need that. Let me close that. Let's start up Visual Studio. The project we make is going to have a very simplistic interface. It won't even have a lot of code in it, but I want to really walk you through it slowly so you can see what's going on. All right. So I made that new folder here called SQL Server Tester right there. So I want to create a new project. All right. And it's going to be a Windows Forms app. And I'm going to call it just that, SQL Server Tester. So really, this will be SQL Server Tester app. And I'm going to put it into my folder. That's called SQL Server Tester. And I'm going to call the solution, instead of test app, I'm going to call it test solution. The names aren't that important, but if you do want to follow what I'm doing, the project name will be SQL Server Test App. The location will be in the SQL Server Tester. In fact, let's make this tester as well. Instead of test app, we'll make that tester app. And we'll make this tester solution. Okay. All right. Now I'm going to click create. You've seen this multiple times. All right. I want to bring up my toolbox for now. So I'm going to view my toolbox. There it is. I'm going to pin it. All right. And I'm going to move this over, way over. And I'm going to move this over about the same amount. Why? Because I want this to be nice and wide. About like that. And I'm going to make it go down to the bottom. Just like that. This is going to be my interface. All right. I'm going to move this over for just a second. I'm going to change, because I always do this. I'm going to change my background color. I'm going to use the yellow. All right. So we've got that. And what are we going to put in here? All right. Well, the first thing we're going to put in here is the newer tool that we've just started using. And that is, we're going to find a data grid view. Now, when you use a data grid view, it's right here. And we've always been using this all Windows forms, but there's also a thing in here that's called data, and data grid view is in there also. So it doesn't matter which one you choose it from. You're getting the same data grid view both ways. All right. So let's scale that down a little bit. And again, I'm going to move this over like that. And I'm going to grab a data grid view and just drop it right here. All right. There's a bunch of stuff here we're not getting into, just so you know. All right. With this smart tag that's right here. But I'm going to take this and click on it. It's going to take up most of the screen. About, I don't know, about there. That looks pretty good. All right. Then down below that, I'm going to put in a text box here. So I'm going to go back to my all Windows controls, and I'm going to find a text box and drop that in. And that's going to be pretty long. Oh, till about there. Plus, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that multi-line right away, which means I can make it go down to the bottom here. This is where I'm going to type in a query, any query I want to type in. Okay. And I'm going to put in 3 buttons. They're going to be skinny. They're about like that. Okay, we'll have one here, and we'll have one here. This button is basically, we've been calling it calculate, but we're going to call it here execute. And this will be our clear, and this will be our exit. Nothing new there. The only other thing we have to put in for this whole interface here are going to be 2 labels. Okay, so let me grab a label and put it in here. All right, and as always, in here, I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to put the number 0 in there, which may not make a lot of sense, but it will in just a bit. So it's got the number 0 in it. And I'm going to set the, as we always have done, the auto size property to false. Okay, I'm going to make this bigger. But since all it's going to have in there, I'll leave it about that size right there. but I'm going to make it pretty big, bigger than I usually make things. All right, so we're going to come in here and let's make this, I don't know, let's make it about 36 and bold and Arial like that. Okay. All right. And I'm going to actually make this a little wider, but I'm going to center this inside of the box here. Let's take the box and let's make it darker so it really shows what we're doing. And then I'm going to come in and for the text align, I'm going to set it to right in the center like that. All right. Now I'm going to make one more label. All right. And no, I don't want it to have a 0 in it, but that's going to go right there. And it's going to say for the text, I'm going to make the text smaller. All right, so instead of 36 like this for that one, I'll make it about 24. That should be plenty big. All right, and I want it to say in the text, I want it to say records selected like that. And again, I'm going to come in here and I am going to change my alignment to make it right in the center. All right, so this is my interface. All right, we haven't named anything yet. We haven't done diddly with anything yet. All right, but we have, our GUI is done. So let's name these things. So this is going to be our data grid view, and it's going to be for the MMA books. So let's just call this DGV for data grid view, MMA books. Okay, fine. There's the name of that. That's my data grid view. All right, this text box is where we're going to run a query. So I'm going to call this txt query. All right. We didn't change the name of our form, so let's do that. So let's do a form rename, and we'll call this FRM, and let's just call it again. It's an SQL server, and let's make it smaller. Let's just call it FRM tester. So it's nice and simple. All right. Do we want to change it? Yes, we do. All right. Now, I don't know why I get this, but I do. And then when I go back and change it again to just form 1, it goes away. All right. And then when I go back and change it again, then normally it takes it the second time. I don't know why. It's some, oh, good golly. All right. Still there. It took that. I don't. All right. Weird things have been happening, but whatever. So our form is now FRM query tester. Let's change the text on the form. All right. We're going to say SQL server database dash query tester app, something like that. So now that's done. So we've renamed our form. We've renamed our data grid view. Let's also come in and right away. Why don't we just right away? Oops. Let's take and lock our controls. Okay, so that's done. All right. So this text box again is txt query. We've got that done. The button here, this will be btn execute. And the code will say execute. The next one will be our clear. In fact, let's put the underscore and everything in here. So we'll put an E in there before the word execute. We'll put an underscore with the ampersand. And this one again will be, so we've got btn execute. And it looks like it might have said executed, which I don't want. So btn execute. This one is btn clear. And the last one here will be BTN exit. And it will have E ampersand XIT. Let's change the size of all this. So let's change the size of the buttons. I don't know what we'll want that to be. Let's try 16. Bold and Arial. Is that big enough? I think that's readable. All right, we'll change the text in here as well to 16. Same thing. I don't believe you can't set the text size in here. I believe you cannot set the text size for the data grid view. You're just not allowed to do it. All right. Okay. So this, we're going to call this LBL number of records, right? And this will be called LBL records selected. Okay. Let's double check and make sure that I've named or renamed everything. Not a big interface, so it doesn't take too long. So that's all done. Good. All right. Again, let's come in here and I'm going to click on here and I'm going to set the accept button to BTN execute. And I'm going to set the cancel button to BTN clear. I'm going to set my size or my start position to center screen. Got all that done. Okay. Now let's set our tab order. So I'm going to click on here and do a view tab order. This will be 0. So we're going to make it 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And do another view tab order. Now that's all set. Now we're going to do our exit and our clear, the stuff we always do. But let's think about this. Okay. And what I mean is when we clear, what do we want to have happen? Well, we want to make sure that says 0. We want to make sure that's empty. And we want to make sure that's empty. Plus, we might as well put the focus back in here in the text box. All right. So clear, clear, set to 0, set the focus. So there's 4 things we want to do in the clear event. Okay, that hopefully at least makes sense. Exit will be the same thing that we always do. So this will be the execute. There's clear. And there's exit. Okay, let's just do them in reverse order, I guess. So let's start with exit and let's grab from another program. Probably have it in here in this MySQL tester. At least I hope I do. Okay. Like I said, at least I hope I do. All right. Let's see. So low, there's the exit program or not. There it is. Okay, I'm going to leave that open because we're going to use that to copy some stuff in just a moment. So this will be exit program or not. And then down here, we'll just plop that in. So there's our exit program or not. Okay, why is it giving me an error? Oh, that's got to be a capital E. There we go. Now we've got this connection.close. Don't worry about it. We're going to get that in just a moment. But for now, all I'm going to do is comment that out so I can run this to see if the program actually works. There it is. So exit, no, no, exit, yes. Okay, well, that's a start. All right, that was the first thing in here. That was the first thing that I wanted to do. All right. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, and this is going to take a while to explain, but I want to do this. I'm going to go back to here and I want to grab all this big comment in here, starting on line 16, and it goes all the way down to line 56. So about 40 lines of code. These are going to be our um, global variables for the program. Okay, so I'm going to put it right in here. Now, I want to look at and almost read to you some of the commands that are in here. All right. So let's make this bigger so you can see everything. So the first thing we're doing is, again, we're creating a connection object. Notice that it's not a connection, it's an SQL connection, because we're not working with MySQL in here anymore. We're working with SQL Server. And again, MySQL and SQL Server are two different relational database management systems. All right, but very similar. Now, these just so you know, these links are a little old. They're about a year old. They still work because I checked them yesterday. So, as it says, an SQL connection object represents a unique connection to an SQL Server data source. With a client-server database system, it is equivalent to a network connection to a server. So the reason I'm telling you this, we're going to be connecting to our own machine. So we're going to be using, in essence, our own machine as both the client and the server. And that's what we did with PHPMyAdmin as well. So you'll notice as you look in here, SQL connection is used together with SQL data adapter and SQL command to increase performance. All right. Now it says for all third-party server products and all other OLEDB supported data sources, use OLEDB connection. Who cares? There's actually 3 connections that you can make, 3 different kinds. All right. There is what's called an SQL connection, which is the one we want to make because that's when you're connecting to SQL Server. Okay. There is an OLEDB connection, and that stands for Object Linking and Embedding. All right. And there is also, what is there? There's OLEDB, there's SQL, and what is the other one? There's another one. All right. But the point is this: when you're working with databases, SQL Server, you're going to connect using SQL connection. If you're working with other databases, you might use an OLDB or an OLEDB, all right, or the other connection that's there that's escaping me right now. I'm not sure why, but it is. All right, this will be our connection. This is the same kind of connection that we made when we were working with MySQL. But again, we are going to be connecting to an SQL server database and not to a MySQL database. All right, then we're doing commands. As it says, when an instance of SQL command is created, the read-write properties are set to their initial value. The reason that this is important and what's going to differentiate this from what we did in the last program is in here, we're going to be able to write any kind of query. Well, technically, let me repeat that. This program really, what we're creating in here is more, I'd say that virtually of the queries that we're going to put in here are going to be select queries. We're not going to worry about inserts and updates and deletes. I'm not saying you couldn't do those, but that's not what we're going to be concentrating on. We're going to be concentrating on the select statement. The idea behind this program, all right, and the reason that I'm putting it up here, the reason I'm even doing this is tomorrow and Wednesday and Thursday, when we go over chapters 20, 21, and 22, respectively, we're going to be using the Muroc MMA books database. If you really want to be able to look at that database, see what's in it, you'll be able to use this SQL query tester or SQL server query tester. Okay. All right. So just like before, but we used a MySQL data adapter. Now we're using an SQL data adapter, not a MySQL, but an SQL. Again, notice what it says. It serves as a bridge between the data set and SQL Server. All right. Some of the commands that we do in this program are going to be different than what we did before. So you know. All right. In the last program, the interface contained 11 text boxes. 10 of them, which were shown right on screen, all right, all in the, in a big area in one group box, and the other one, which we used so that we were able to go in and search. In this one, we're not going to have any of those. The only text box we're going to have is at the bottom. We're going to put a query in there. We're going to click the execute button. And when we do, ideally at least, the results are going to come out into our data grid view. Right? So we're again going to be using a data table. And as it says, the data table class is a database table representation and provides a collection of columns and rows, all right, to store in a grid form. Now that we've got this con right here, now that we've got this, I'm wondering if I'm able to go back down to the bottom, and now we don't get an error there anymore. All right, well, that's good. Okay, all right. Now, we've looked at so far, we've looked at the exit button, and I explained to you what the global variables here are going to be. Well, let's go to our clear routine. We always called it clear all. I'm just going to call it clear the GUI. It doesn't really matter, again, what you call this. I get an error because, of course, it hasn't been written yet. So private void clear the GUI. All right, so let's go in. I know I'm not going to put a try in there. Okay, so we're going to clear this now. Now, when you clear a data grid view, it's done in a little bit different way. You are clearing out a database control. Not only that, there are different ways that you can actually clear it. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clear the data grid view. All right. Now I'm going to give you another URL in here, and I'm going to save this all when I get done. https://www.codeproject, which is kind of a neat site, .com/questions/332.902 slash how dash to dash clear dash data grid view dash in dash C#. And let's see if I typed it in the correct manner or not. And as you can see, how to clear a data grid view in C#. All right, somebody asked a question and they gave different ways of doing it. So I think it was this one right here, something like this. All right, I did a lot of reading when we got to this point on how to clear it. Because again, I wanted to come up with what I thought was the most intuitive way possible of you doing this. So this is what I'm going to do. Now, I'm no expert on this. Okay. So what we're saying here is if there's a data source right now connected to it, break that data source, for lack of better words. All right. Otherwise, just clear out what's in there. So that is going to clear the data grid view. We're not going to be able to test that until we actually have some code or some actual results in our data grid view, but we'll look at it later. Next, we're going to set the number of records value in the label back to 0. So LBL number of records dot text equals 0. And again, we can test that, but it already is going to be 0 when we run it, so it's not going to look like we did anything. Finally, we want to clear the text box and set focus to the text box. All right, so txt query dot text equals double quote txt query dot focus. Okay, shouldn't be any surprises in there. The only thing that's new again is this, and I gave you. So let me do this. Again, I can put any garbage in here I want. The only thing that's going to happen, I'm going to click over here. I'll click in the data grid view. Now, when I click clear, it clears and my cursor is there. I'm not going to center what I put in there. All right. So that's all done. Okay. So far, not going to lie to you, this has not been a really impressive program. Okay. But now we're going to come in and we're going to actually do some code. The first thing that we're going to do, all right, and I'm going to do that in my form load event. So let me grab the form load and I'm going to bring that up to the top. We're going to bring it up to the top, right underneath those global variables that we set up. All right, so even here, even before this. So there's our load event. So this is where we're going to do this. Okay. Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, again, set the connection string, but we're going to do it in a different way. It's a different relational database management system. It's done in a different way. That's about all I can tell you. All right. So when we do this, technically, this is not a string. This is not an int. This is not really any kind of the variables that we have. So we want to call it, we're going to call it constring, but I'm going to put var in front of it, which basically means let the system figure out the type of value that it holds. So I'm going to say var constring equal. Now this is going to be kind of long. All right. And what I want to show you here is I want to put it in, but let me type it in first. Then I'm going to show you where I got it from. This whole routine is 5 lines long. All right, 6 if I include this. So 1, 2, then I'm going to have another comment and set the constring, then another comment, and then have it opened. Let me put all 6 of the lines in, then we'll go back and look at everything we've done. It's going to look a little weird, but just hold back on it, okay? All right, like I said, if you give me a second, I want to write this whole routine. There's about just a few more lines in here, then we're going to go back and look at everything that's in here. I promise. All right. So we've done that. And then finally, that's everything. First of all, where did I even get this thing from? What the heck is this? Let's break it down. All right, data source equal, where do we get this? Come on, Jeff. Where do we get that from? I want to show you right now. Now, in order for you to see this on yours, because it'll be different than mine, you will have to load that SQL Server Management Studio. All right. So I'm going to come over to here, click my Windows Start button. I'm going to go down and find my Microsoft Server Tools and my SQL Management Studio. And it's going to come up, hopefully at least, with a box. After this box will be another box. There it is. Now, I'm sure it'll be very hard for you to read, but this says server type and it's got database engine. There's other stuff in here as well. There is analysis services, reporting services, integration services, and Azure equals the next thing. The next thing that's in there is this local DB, MS, etc. That's the server name. All right. Now there might be other things in there. You want that one. Okay. Then after that, so I'm going to grab that right there. I'm just going to copy that. It's in blue. I'm going to copy it and I'm going to throw it for now just onto Notepad here. Let's make it nice and big so you can read it. Whoops. And there it is. Okay. Then underneath that, it says authentication and it says Windows authentication. What that means is you will be able, once you are logged into your Windows account as a Windows user, you've got, you have access to this database. If you wanted to add another layer of security in there, we don't, but if you did, you could change this from Windows authentication to SQL Server authentication. Then you need to provide a login and a password. So in other words, a database administrator could set this up if you were all sucking off the same server, not a local machine, but an actual database server. You could do that. We don't want to. We're the only ones using this, so we're going to use Windows authentication. All right. The other thing that's going to be important in here is this username. My username will not be the same as your username. So my username, if I bring this back up in here, my username is desktop hyphen M1J 4BEF backslash JP Scott. Now that's mine. I don't mind sharing that with you. That's you're not gonna be able to do anything with it anyway. That is distinct to my machine. That's my username on this machine. Yours will be different. I would recommend that you grab that username and write it like I did here and save it someplace. So right now it says, do you want to connect to the server? Yes, I do. I do. All right. So I'm going to click the connect button right here. Now it filled some stuff up here. It's telling me that an update is available. You may get that. I'm not going to touch that. But when I look in here under databases, I've got a whole bunch of stuff. Yours might be almost empty. All right. And you can see I've already got an MMA Books DB and an MMA Books 2 DB. I don't even care. I'm going to remove both of them. So I'm going to right mouse click on it and choose delete. I may be very sorry that I did this, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to remove this one too. Now I've got a bunch of databases in here. Okay. Don't worry about what this stuff is. They're for other classes, etc. All right. What I've got open in here too, just so you see it, this is called right here. If I go to view, you'll notice there is an object explorer here. Well, that's there, but what I want is, I believe under tools, under view rather, is the SQL Server object explorer. Where is it? I guess this is the one I want right here, the object explorer. All right. I don't expect a lot of this to make sense to you. All right. But this is what I'm going to want to do. All right. So what I'm telling you here is, what have we done so far? Well, I created that folder on the desktop that I called, I think it was SQL Server Tester or something like that. Started up Visual Studio, made a new project, set the folder and the solution. Okay. Added a data grid view to my GUI, created the GUI like I showed you. All right. Then we went in and we added the code for the exit button. We added the code for the clear button, and we added the code for the form load event. All right. We also went in and we added the those database variables that we talked about. All right. Now, then we went in and we clicked the Windows Start button. and I went and looked, and again, you have to download separately the Microsoft Server Management Studio, MSSM. Even if you've already got your Microsoft SQL Server loaded on your machine. So after we did that, okay, I started up Microsoft Server Management Studio. It opened up the Object Explorer. All right. Now, in here, what I want to do is I want to add that database. All right, that MMA books. Well, let's see. Got this already. This is one of the things that I sent to you at the beginning of the semester. So if I go out to the C drive, all right, and I go out to here, you've all got this C# students thing. And there should be a folder in there. There should be a folder in there, let's see, that's called student download. And there's a folder in there called database. And in that folder are 3 files. One that's called create_database.sql, which I'm going to use in a minute. Another one called mmabooks.mdf, which is basically the database I just removed. MDF is Microsoft database file. And another file called mmabooks_log.ldf. The LDF is log data file. And what the log file is supposed to include is everything that you did to the database. Any adds, any updates, any deletes, etc. All right. So what I'm going to attempt to do right now are 2 things. First, I'm going to attempt to come in here, and I want to make sure that's what I want to call the database. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to remove this, create all that stuff right there. I'm going to create the database myself because sometimes this is problematic. So I'm going to remove that like that. And then I want the database to be called MMA Books. Even though databases typically end with DB on the end, it's not going to really matter. So MMA Books. So I'm going to come in here, I'm going to right mouse click on databases, and I'm going to choose new database. And it comes up with a bunch of junk in here. All right. Put in here MMA Books. It's going to create a bunch of stuff for us. And I'm just going to try to click OK and see if it works. And now down here, lo and behold, there's a new database called MMA Books. There it is. We just created it. All right. Now, what I want to do is I want to bring in everything that was in this file, this create database SQL file. How do I do that? All right. I come in and I right mouse click on my new database and I choose new query right there. Just so you see it, there's nothing in that database. Now you might say, yeah, there is. Well, if I go to tables, there are no tables in there. There's system stuff that was set up for me, but none of my own stuff is in there. So I'm going to right mouse click on there and I'm going to choose new query. And it brings up what's called the query window. Kind of similar to when we were running our own queries under phpMyAdmin. Kind of the same thing. But now I'm going to go back to that file. And again, I'm going to open, I think it's open already. There it is. And I'm going to grab all of it. Now, you might say, so what? Well, look how big it is. It is 1,039 lines long. So I'm going to do a Control A, Control C. This will create the tables. It will set up primary keys, foreign keys, and then it'll also populate it with data. We're going to look at that in just a moment. So Control A, Control C to highlight all of it, and then I'm going to paste it right in here. After I do that, to run it, way over to the left here, there's a green button that says Execute. I may get an error. Let's look. When you get these one row affected, that's every time it's added a record. It worked. All right. Now I'm going to close this query, and it's going to say, do I want to save it? No, I don't. So no. All right. Now let's take a look in this MMA books. And now when I go underneath, I might have to click, there's a button here to refresh. I'm going to refresh. Now I'm going to click under tables. And now you can see it made some tables for me. There is a customers table, an invoice line items table, an invoices table, an order option with those something stuck in your head and you're like, didn't I see those before? Because the answer is yes, you have. And I'm bringing our book back up. And I'm going to go to chapter 19 once it comes up. And if you remember, chapter 19 was our introduction to the database. And if you look on page 616, or is it 617? I don't know. There's our database. Customers, invoices, states, invoice line items, order options, and products. All right, that is our database. Now, to just prove it again, all right, with all this in here, I'm going to do this for each one of the tables. I'm going to right mouse click on the table. All right, I'm going to right mouse click on it. And let's see what we have in here. Select top 100 rows. And down here, it is showing us the records that are in here. Now, you might look at this and go, well, what the heck is this up above? This is the actual command that ran when I right mouse clicked and told it to show me the top 100 rows. Now, it gives you errors here. It says invalid column name. It's not. This is just like a quirk in the tool. All right. But that's the command that runs. And this set. All right. So again, it might ask me if I want to save. No, if they do. These are my line items. So again, show top 100 rows. There they are. All right. Then we've got our invoices. Again, let's show the top 100 rows. There they are. All right. Next, we have our order options. This is very small. There's just one, which has got our taxes, etc. on there. All right. Next, we've got our products. And you'll notice, even though I told it to show me the first 100 rows, it's only showing me 16 because there's 16 products. These are 16 different Muroc books. This is the price of each book, how many they have on hand. I don't even know what this row version is for. All right. And finally, we can go to states. This should look familiar to you. And there's our different states. Now there's today. And what is it? They add the Virgin Islands. There that is. Puerto Rico. And I think the District of Columbia. There it is. All right. That's what those are. Now, also show you here, I'm going to close this, but let's go to probably the customers, and I'm going to right mouse click on it, and I'm going to choose now design. And this shows the schema for the table. I wanted to look at this because it's a little bit different from what we did previously in PHP My Admin. It's similar, but it's a little bit different. This is the GUIized version, so to speak. All right. So you'll notice if we look in here, we get what? We've got a customer ID, which is of type integer, a name, which is of type varchar. You now know what varchar is. That's variable length character field. All right, that I believe can be up to 255 characters. Another varchar of 50 for the address. Another varchar of 20 for the city. A state, which is a char, which is a fixed length. All right, so each state is 2 characters. A zip code, which is weird because they made that a char of 15. And then this row session, and that's a timestamp. Basically, you can use that for a history. All right, I don't want to get into it any more than that. But if I go here and I click on any one of these, what you'll notice is what'll happen in here is it'll change. All right. But in here, there's table designer and there's a bunch of stuff in here. All right. What I want to show you though is this column names, data types, and allow nulls. Well, one thing you probably notice in here is they don't have a thing for auto increment like we had when we were using the PHP My Admin. It's done differently in here. To set this up as an auto increment field, you go down to here where it says identity specification. You click on that and you click on the is identity, you set it to yes. And then for the identity increment 1 and the identity seed 1. What this means is this is going to be an auto increment field. It will automatically increment by 1 and it will start with 1. If we wanted it to start with something else like 500, we could put a 500 in there. Typically, you don't want it, you want it to increment by 1, but we could choose another number as well. What I'm trying to show you in here are some of the differences between the way it looks when you set up your schema in SQL Server versus what we saw when we set up the schema for MySQL using PHP My Admin. All right. So that's what we've done. I mean, again, I just came in here. I went into this query window that was in here and I dumped in every one of the lines of code except the ones that I took out for creating the database. All right. And that gave us these 6 tables. All right. And we copied that clipboard, what was in that clipboard to the query window, ran it. And then we very quickly now have looked at these 6 tables. For each table, we looked at the data. And then I went back just to the customers table here to look at the schema. All right. Now, just so you know this, I'm going to close this. And I'm going to go back and I'm not going to choose a table. I'm going to go to tables here. And I could add a new table if I wanted to, just so you see that. But I'm going to go back to MMA books right here. And I'm going to choose new query. Okay. Now I can type virtually anything in here I want, such as I can say select star from customers. And then I can click this to run it, and boom, I get all of my customers. They're all in there. There are actually 696 customers. All right. And I can do that. If I want to save the query, when I go to close it, it says, do you want to save it? Mine here would be SQL query 8. I don't want to save it anyway, so no. All right. So now we have our database. Okay. Our program is not connected to the database yet. All right. In fact, it may be, but let's go in here and let's go a file. Let's do a save all. Okay. And I'm actually going to exit this. So I'm going to do a file exit. Now you might say, well, wait a minute, don't you need that in here? Well, look, right now, if you remember what was in here before, if you know, when we viewed was our toolbox. But I can also go in here and say view, and I can say SQL Server Object Explorer. And lo and behold, that's the same thing that we just looked at. All right, I have to remember which one of these it is, but it's in there. There it is. And there's our MMA books that we just looked at. So that's in there now. All right, so let's actually go in and write the code to make this program work. All right, and there's really not a lot of it. And all of the code will be based off of this execute button in here. Okay, so I'm just going to call a routine that I'm going to write down below that's called attempt to execute. Of course, I get an error because that hasn't been written yet. So let's write it right here, private void attempt to execute query. And there it is. Now, not a thing will happen when I run this. Nothing will happen because I haven't put any code in there yet. All right. So the first thing we want to do is the query command that we're going to run. That's going to be what we enter into the text box. I want to say that again. The query command that we talked about up here someplace, this is going to, we want to associate that with whatever we're going to type into the text box. All right. But we want to make sure we're always starting with a clean slate. So I'm going to put in here a comment that says wipe out whatever is currently in the query command. Typically equal null. So now I'm starting with a new slate. Get rid of that. That's the first thing I've done. Okay. Now what we need to do is to start working. Well, to start this, we have to instantiate a couple things. All right. So first we're going to instantiate a new SQL data adapter. And if you say, wait a minute, what the heck is that? Well, if you come back up here, SQL data adapter, that's that query adapter that's right here. Again, provides the bridge. All right, it's going to have a fill, which is going to basically go and fill up for us eventually the results of whatever we key in for our command. So we already have a name for that. It's called query adapter. That equal to a new SQL data adapter, just like that. Again, Many of the things that are in here are similar to what we did, all right, in our MySQL. Some are a little bit different, some are totally different. All right, so that's the first thing. Second, we want to again instantiate a new data table object. So I'm going to say table, because we made that before, equals new data table. What is that? Again, if we lift our way up here, this is going to allow us to do some manipulation, for lack of better words. All right, now I can run this and basically it'll be just like before, in that I can run this. Should come up with something. Don't know why it's not. All right. Oh, it's okay. Cannot open database. Oh, crud. I called it MMA booze. How the heck did I do that? We'll have to fix that, because that'll fix it. All right. Let's stop it and try running it again. Oh, it's still going to be wrong because I don't have a DB in mind. That's okay. Remember, I called it just MMA books. So let's remove that. Let's try it a third time and see if that's a charm. There you go. Now, we're not going to get anything in here. The execute doesn't do much right now. The clear will work in that it'll clear this out and make sure that's 0, and it'll clear this out. And the exit works. But the first thing we want to check is if you put nothing in here and you clicked execute, all right, that's an error because there's nothing to execute. So we're going to check for nothing in the query input box. That's the first thing we're going to do. All right, again, we're going to check for nothing in the query input box. Let's go down to the bottom here, and then let's write one of our show messages that we've been doing. So private void show message string message string title and message box.show will show the message and the title, and we'll put in here MS or message box with our OK button and comma, and this is going to be an error. So for the icon, message box icon error. All right. So the first thing that we're going to do then in here, in our attempt to execute query, we've now wiped out what was currently in our query command. We have instantiated a new SQL data adapter. We have instantiated a new data table object. All right. So now, as I said before, we're going to check for an empty query input text box. So if txt query.text.trim is, you know what that means. All right. So if that's the case, we're going to call show message, and we're going to pass nothing entered into query text box. That'll be the first thing. That'll be our message. Our title will be query text box text box text box empty. All right, that's all we need for that. And it's empty, so there's nothing to remove, but we do want to give it focus. and we're going to return. There's nothing else to do. We didn't put anything in there. So we should be able to test this. We should be able to test that. Let's try it. Okay, there's nothing in here. Click execute. Query text box empty. Nothing entered into query text box. All right, so that worked. Okay, that's a good thing. All right. So if we get down to this point right here, if we get down to here, there's not going to be an else. All right. There was something. Text box. All right. Now I'm just going to put in here, handle it. And it'll be handled in different ways. But we're going to put everything into one of our try catch blocks. All right. And if there's an error, so we'll do it like this. There are different SQL errors that you can put in, but I'm just going to put in here. So under catch, I'm going to say, let's call our show message. And we're going to pass in ex.message. How about this? We'll say, how about just invalid query in text box. All right. And then we will add to that the system message. So ex.message. Well, I removed it. All right. And let's see. We need a title. So we'll just say, I don't know, query text box in query text box contents invalid, something like that. Okay. All right. Now, I don't think we can even do that right now, because if I do come in here, run this, and I just put in hello, and I click execute, it doesn't know how to handle it yet. Why? Because there's nothing in the try right now. We have to put some stuff in the try. So I handled the error before I actually handle it working or not working. So let's come in here and let's put some stuff into the try block. All right. And really, this is just about it for what we have to put in for code. All right. And also, we should be able to run it after that. But one thing I didn't mention was, if we do this, there's garbage in here. So we can then say txt query dot text equals nothing. So we can give it the focus, and then we can return. Okay, the system figured out, the IntelliSense, what we wanted to do there. So like I said, there's literally 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 lines of code. But I want to explain each line of code as we put it in. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to instantiate a new SQL command object. That thing that we set earlier in here, wherever it was, where was it? Here, we set query command to null. Now we're going to create a new one. So query command equals new SQL query command. And we have to tell it it's going to be whatever was in that txt query.text. We want to do that, and we want to use our connection. Now that's running off. Don't know why we're getting an error, but we'll see if we'll fix it in a minute. All right. And that's not a query command. It's just an SQL command. That's why we're getting the error. Let's see now if there's room for it in here. There we go. All right. So we're creating a new query command. It's a new SQL command. We're telling it to that command will be whatever we entered into our text box, and we're going to use our connection. Still don't know if it's going to work or not. All right. But if I do put in garbage in here and I click execute, still isn't showing me anything. All right. It will in just a moment. All right. So there's the first thing that we want to do. Next, use the query adapter. And this is going to be very similar to the comment you saw up above as a bridge between the program and the MMA books database. All right. So query adapter dot select command equals query command that we just wrote. Again, we are establishing the communication. All right. So that should do it. Now we have to tell it to fill up the data table with the output of the query adapter. And if you're confused, think about it this way. This says, let's suppose we typed in, I'm just going to make this up right now. Let's say we typed in select star from customers. Let's assume this is what we typed into this right here. So we type that in. We clicked execute. The system comes in and it says, all right, wipe out whatever was in our query command, set up a brand new data adapter, set up a new data table object, check, was it empty? No. So it goes down into here. Then it says, okay, our new SQL command will be whatever we entered in here, which, like I said, was select star from customers, and run that using our connection. Then the results are going to go into this query adapter. They are going to hold our what is referred to as our result set. All right. They will hold what is called our result set. All right. So that's the second thing. Then we're going to come down here and we're going to say, fill the data table with the output of the query adapter. So query adapter dot, notice there's a method called fill, and we're going to fill what? The table. All right. Now we have to set the data source, for the data grid view. Well, let's just say for the DGV MMA books data grid view. All right. So DGV data grid view, MMA books dot data source equal table. Finally, we have to set the number of records returned in the associated label. Guess what? After we put that line in here, LBL number of records dot text equal. We're going to get an error when we do this, but we'll fix it right away. We're going to say table dot rows dot count, and it gives us an error because this is an integer and that's a label. We already know how to fix that because we've been doing it like this all semester. And that is, come on, we have to come in here and say dot toString. And I think we're done. Let's check. So file, save all. Now when we come in here and we type in here, I could make the text bigger. So select star from customers and we click execute. All right. Well, it says it doesn't like something. The following exception occurred. Which is amazing because I wrote it the same way I wrote the other one, the copy I have, and it worked. So it says to replace this, default dialog must handle the data error event. Never version thing that's in there. All right. How do I fix that? Let's think about this. Okay. Now, if I keep clicking this, it's just going to keep doing this. I don't want that. All right. So let's see if I'm going to actually have to stop this by clicking up here. All right. Now, this is the problem right here is if I go over to my MMA books table. All right. And I go over to the customers. Okay. And again, if I do come in here, this again, come on. And I view the designer, this row version field. I'm going to highlight that field and I'm going to hit delete. All right. And it removed it from here as well. And now I'm going to do a file, save all. All right. Don't worry about that. And it's going to say, do I want to save this query? No. All right. But I do have to see if it's now gone from customers. So let's look and see if I view the. No, that's still in there. All right, then let's do it like this. Let's do it the way we're supposed to. First of all, let's see if it's in all the other ones. This one does not have that row conversion thing. So let's look at the next one. That does not have it. Let's look at the next one. That does not have it. How about the next one? That has it. So products and customers both have a row version. Okay, so let's see. And state doesn't. All right, so let's close all these. I'm going to come over to MMA books. I'm going to come over here to MMA books. I'm going to right mouse click and I'm going to choose new query. And I'm going to say alter table dbo.customers, remove column row version. I don't know if it'll work or not. I'm going to try it though. Doesn't seem to like the word remove, but let's see. All right. Oops, I clicked the wrong button. I want to click over here. On execute. Incorrect syntax. Maybe it's drop column. I don't know. It might be delete column. Drop column row version. Let me grab this so I've got the right syntax. And let's go back to the customers table, and then let's look at the data again. And you'll notice that row version is gone. All right. So let's run this query again, but let's remove it from products. Completed successfully. Let's go to our products table and let in view the data. And that's gone from there as well. All right. So I'm going to remove this, and it'll ask me again, do I want to save this? No. Now I'm going to do a file save all, and I may have to quit the program and come back again, but we'll see in a minute. I'm going to make this text in here bigger. So for the font right now, let's try making it about 20. All right. And it's already bold and Arial. So there we go. So let's run this. It should work now, I think. Select star from customers. Click execute. There's our 696 customers. Now we could come in here. Notice this is probably a lot wider than we need. So we could cut this down. So there's all our customers. What else did we have? We had states. And you'll notice 53, and there they are. Products, I think there were 16 or something like that. There's our products. And again, we don't have that row version, so that's been fixed. All right. And I have to check to see what the other ones were. All right. But notice what I can do now. Okay, let's go to customers. All right, and execute. Now there's our customers, and there's a customer ID, etc. There's all this good stuff in here. So I'm going to jump back into here, and let's see if we can combine something. So let's see if we can get a customer name followed by, oh, I don't know. Let's see if we can get some information in here. So I'm going to see if I can combine information from 4 tables here. So let me kind of write the query. I'm going to write it in the old-fashioned way because it's easier to write it. Plus, it's the way I learned to write it. But I'm going to say select C dot name I dot invoice date I already know too how to go and take these things and write aliases for them. So I'm going to make this pretty. All right, so we now have information from here and from here. Let's get the unit price and the quantity. Pretty this up a little bit. And from the products table, we'll get the description. How's that? So from customers, C, invoices, I, invoice, line items, ILI, products, P, where, now I have to start joining these tables. So C dot customer ID equals I dot customer ID. So that'll join the first two tables. And I dot invoice ID equals ILI dot invoice ID. So that'll take the second and third and it'll join those. Now we have to go to our products. And they both have a product code. ILI dot product code equals P dot product code. Now this should work because at least it looks like it should. All right. Grab all that. Go back to my program run. Let's clear what was in there. Notice that worked. That worked. Didn't clear this though. That isn't good. So we'll have to look at that. And whoa, object reference not set to an instance of an object. It says here it was null. In fact, let me show you this now. If I do come in here and type in, for example, in here, I'll type in hello there, which is not a valid query. So now I get invalid query in text box, could not find stored procedure hello. This is my message. This is the system message right here. All right. Now, when I did go run this, in fact, let's try this again. I'm going to try something here. The clear is not working right there. And when I ran it before, it worked. Now, what does that mean? I don't know. All right, but I'm going to go back to where I cleared that, and I want to double check and make sure that when I did that, I didn't type in anything incorrectly. I did not think I did, but let's go look anyway. So this was in our clear, the GUI. Right. No, that's actually correct. So there must be an error in my code. Let's go back and run it again and see if I can just do part of this stuff that's in here. What do I mean? I'm going to go back to where I wrote this query right here. And I'm going to see if I can just join two tables. I mean, I kind of went a little nuts here, But let's see, let's just grab these three things. So I'm grabbing from the customer table, I'm grabbing the name. From the invoice table, I'm grabbing the date. From the invoice table, I'm grabbing the product total. All right, so that'll be from these two. And just the first where. Now, if it gives me another error like it just did, then there's an error in my code. There it is. It's all in here. All right, maybe I did make this thing too big as far as the verbiage. There it is. So that's working. So it is grabbing the customer name from the customer table, the date from the invoice table, and the date or the product total from the invoice table. And it showed me 40 things. All right. Let's see if we can add the third one then. So let's see if we can put in the third one that was in here. So this was the invoice line item. So we want to add these two things. All right. And no comma there. So this, you just saw it with the name, the date, the product total. Now I'm adding the unit price and the quantity, but I'm also going to have to add that check right here. And again, there could be errors in my query. So let's see if that one runs. All right. It says this stuff could not be found from ILI. Okay, that must be where the problem is. So let's look. Oh, I didn't add it here. Invoice line items, ILI. That could be what the error was. Okay, now I'm getting information from three tables. This first field that's in here, this is coming from our customers table. The next two fields that are in here, this one and this one, these two, all right, are coming from the invoice table. And these last two in here, these are coming from the invoice line item table. All right, so far so good. And then let's look at the last part of this to see if we can figure out why it didn't work before. All right, the other things I wanted then were the product description. That's all I wanted, was just the product description. So need another comma here. E.description as description. All right, and then I have to make this last check. And let's double check and make sure, no pun intended, to make sure that I'm writing the right thing in here. So these two, it is product code is the field that's in common. I don't know why that wouldn't have worked. And ILI dot product code is equal to P dot product code. Let's see if that fixed it. Now I did add another table here. So I'll have to say products E. Yeah, I don't need that. My internet is starting to get a little flaky. I apologize for that. So let's go back to here. It's clear. Let's bring that in and again, click execute. Now there's something it doesn't like in there. Set the data source. All I can think, object reference. Yeah, I mean, that can be, that's a very generic error. So let me stop the run. We look here, DBO products. I look at the columns that are in here. There's description, which is what I wanted. Varchar 50. There's a product code. And if I go over to invoice line items and I go to the columns, there's product code. They're both set up the same. So there is something goofy. You've seen now what I wanted to show you, and that is where I joined the two customers and the invoices, 3 tables. When I joined the customers, the invoices, and the invoice line item. But when I tried to do 4 tables, for whatever reason, it didn't like it. I'm still looking in here for something that looks wrong. Thing in here that it doesn't like. Again, there's something in here it doesn't like. I don't know what that is. All right, but if I leave this out and I just do it like this, that query works. Just to prove it one more time. I don't need the products table in here anymore. There. So if I went and grab this and ran the program one more time, put that in here and execute, then it runs. All right, and I get 59 records back, as you can see. For some reason, though, this clear still isn't working, and I don't know why. That should be working. So what I'm going to do very quickly, and we're going to take a break in just a moment, but file, save all. All right, well, I'll keep it open, but I'm going to bring up the other one that was called MySQL Tester. Stupid name. I don't know why, but that's what it's called. And I'm going to run that one. It's going to look very similar. I don't know what the color of the thing is, but it. Okay, hey, so what I've been doing is I've been building another application, and there it is. So it says, okay, cannot open that. So we've got to change the name again back to what it was, which is just MMA Books. So let me save this and run it again. Okay, I guess it was even the same color. So if I do come in here now and I just type in select star from customers and I run it, I get all my customers. And if I click clear, you'll notice that clears. So there's something that's in here that is not in the program when I did my copy of it, and I don't know what that would be. So let me grab everything that was in my clear the GUI. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard, go back to the one I just wrote, find my clear the GUI. Put that in there. Now let's see if that changes anything. It may or may not. Well, okay, yeah. That's DGV is the, come on. Oh, that works now. I don't know why. Now, what I've done today, just so you're aware of it, we're not done yet, but we're coming to the home stretch, so to speak. So what I have done today, bring this back up. There. All right. First of all, no, that isn't it either. I'm sorry. First of all, when we started, I wasn't able to connect to Teams. I don't know why. I tried for 10 minutes. So the first 10 minutes is probably nothing on there because it was just me trying to connect to Teams. I couldn't do that. So I was going to go and set this up and run it on Camtasia, but then I can't have any student interaction. So what I did instead was I rebooted the machine. And when I rebooted the machine, then lo and behold, I was able to get into Teams. Don't know what the problem was. All right, so let's see. So I showed people this is the problem I had this morning. It just said reconnecting. Then it came back and said, sorry, we couldn't connect you. All right. So like I said, that was the problem that I had. All right. So what we did first was we came in, and that word Thursday shouldn't be there, but we completed the C# MySQL GUI app. All right. That's out there on the system. Then I talked about how to use SQL Server. All right. Another app where we were able to write queries. All right. I'm going to give a break in just a couple minutes because I need one. I've been going since about 9:30. All right. But then we're going to go over the final project in the ePortfolio requirements one more time. I do want to mention this again. I'd say half the class sent me an email saying they were having problems with that last problem on the link worksheet, the one I asked you to do yourselves. All right. So I decided I'm changing the due date that was due yesterday for the written tests for chapter 17 through 19 and that link worksheet. I'm changing it from yesterday at midnight to Wednesday at midnight. Also on Wednesday, after I get done with the regular lecture on Wednesday, I'm going to do that problem. All right. I haven't done it yet, but I will. I did the other two. I didn't do this one, but I'm not going to save it as a GitHub repo. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the final project and the ePortfolio requirements one more time. Then tomorrow, I'm going to lecture on chapter 20 and do exercise 20-1. Wednesday, I'm going to lecture on chapter 21, do exercise 21-1 and that link problem I just mentioned from the worksheet. Thursday, lecture on chapter 22 and do exercises 22.1, and 22.2. You do not have to do anything from chapters 20, 21, and 22. I'm going through these as a measure or a means of completing the book. All right. So after you do the chapter 17 written test, the chapter 18 written test, and the chapter 19 written test, and that link worksheet, the only other things you'll have due for the rest of the semester will be your final project and your e-portfolio. So again, it is 11:16. I'm just going to take a small break till 11:25. And at that time, then I'm going to go over both the requirements for the portfolio and the requirements for the final project. All right. So I will see you in 9 minutes, 8 minutes, I guess, just about at 11:25. All right. I got to get a different drink. I'll be right back. All right, it is 11:25, so let's quickly go over these requirements one more time. All right. Firstly, let's talk about your electronic portfolio. These electronic portfolios are due no later than midnight, Wednesday, August 16th. All right. I do try to go through them. I will be going through them on Thursday. If there's a problem with them, it still gives me a little bit of time to try to contact you and have you fix them. Now, when you do this, you should be able to even run it on different browsers and it should look nice on each of them. But the first thing that's in here says you must publish your portfolio to GitHub pages and provide me an invite. Now, hopefully you remember this from earlier in the semester, but if I go in here, go into YouTube, search for me, all right, find me, go to this class. So go to the playlist for this class, which is the summer AWD 1100. Don't want to run anything. But if we look in here, we go back far enough. This was day 30. All right. It says inheritance plus. So in here, there is where I did the, there is where I did creating a portfolio from scratch using MobiRise. And I believe it was after this, maybe I'm wrong. No, it was that I have in there how you can go put it on GitHub pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab, so that's day 30, 7/11. Let me jump back to here. I've got a listing of every day and what was put on there. So oh, there it is. So I will send out this URL along with today with the other stuff I always send out. All right, right here. And that is, you'll be able to take a look at that if you're so inclined or if you need to do so. And that will show you how to publish out to GitHub pages. All right. Remember, the website can be one page or it can be multiple pages. All right, let's assume it's one page because that's usually what students do, but you don't have to. You'll have some kind of a home section, typically near the top. Probably in there, you'll put your picture, or underneath that, in about you, you'll put your picture. Then you'll have your resume. All right. What people do is they provide of the resume and provide links to a PDF version of their resume and to a Word version of their resume. If you don't have a resume, create one. Go out to resume.io and that'll get you started. If you've got a resume and you think, well, I don't know, I don't really like it or whatever, if you want me to take a look at it, I'll be more than happy to. So you'll have one link or one page for home, one for an about you, one for your resume, one for your portfolio work, and one for contact information. If you use a product like MobiRise, I'm not trying to push that product on any of you, but especially those of you where this is your first class, that might be the easiest route for you to go. All right. So you'll notice we got 5 things here. So let me go back. 50 points is putting it into GitHub pages and having it contain those 5 sections or 5 pages. So that's a third. Then the next 50 pages, again, you've got to build it using either MobiRise or Bootstrap, if you know Bootstrap, or some combination of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Again, each page must be similar in styling, coloring, fonts, etc., and be aesthetically pleasing. All right. Now, I had a student who graduated about a year ago, and for his picture, he was at a wedding and that, he had a tux on, which was fine, but he took a picture of him and about a half dozen other people. You shouldn't do that. It should just be a picture of you. All right. So each page or section should contain content meaningful to prospective employers. So in other words, don't put junk in there. Any hyperlinks that you put in, make sure they work. All right. And make sure that if you've got any images, the images come up. If you've got any links to code that those links work, etc. Again, you must include, it says professional image. I don't want an avatar. All right. And I don't want some kind of picture that looks really, I mean, for lack of better words, phone and take a picture of yourself. All right. You should be able to take your phone and take a picture of yourself. All right. If you are in the C# class, but have not yet taken the AWD1000 class, then your last 50 points will be for code and live examples. So what does that mean? Well, you can grab any 6 of the programs that you have, take a screenshot of it. So run the program, have it showing on screen, hit your print screen button on your keyboard, and then save it as like a ping or a GIF or whatever kind of file. All right. And then make that a link where it can link to the actual GitHub repository. And if you go, that's fine, I don't know how to do that, then just email me. I did show you examples earlier. Now, if you have taken the AWD1000 class already, then I want you to include, as it says there, all right, code and live examples from 3 or more homework problems and 3 or more hands-on tests. So it shouldn't be all C#. Ideally, eventually, you will have 3 to 4 projects for the AWD1000, 3 to 4 projects for the AWD1100, 3 to 4 projects for the AWD1111, and 3 to 4 projects for the AWD1115 once you get to that point where you've taken those classes. Again, this is due 2 weeks from Wednesday by midnight. If you have questions on this, please let me know. So that's that one. And as far as the other one, this is the final project. All right. What I hope to be able to do this weekend, all right, ideally, what I'm hoping to be able to do is to make sure that everything has been graded up until that point. So the only things I'm going to have left to grade after this weekend, other than any late work you might turn in, all right, the only other thing I'm going to have to grade will be your portfolios and your final project. I'm going to try to build this final project this weekend. I'll show you then what mine looks like. All right. I'm not going to show you the code. That's what you're supposed to do. So what does this say? All right. You will create a C# application. Call it bookstore. If you don't like bookstore, come up with your own name. All right. It's going to store books for 3 different authors. Notice the data must be stored in a list of type books. Now you can have more than one list if you want to do so. That's totally fine. So you could have a list for each author. I don't care how you do it. But one author should have less than 5 books. One author should have between 5 and 10 books. One author should have greater than 10 books. Now, when I actually do yours, when I'm grading yours, period, this is the rubric. So if you don't have anybody with less than 5 books, you'll lose the 4 points. If you don't have anybody between 5 and 10, you lose 4 points. All right. If it's not real book information, etc., you're supposed, these are your requirements. It's not these are your requirements. Do you like them? It's these are your requirements. All right. Then the author drop-down list should let you filter results from author. All right. What does that mean? That's what they showed here. So there's the author. So probably there'll only be 3 of them here, I would guess. All right. Notice it says allows you for filtering results using the link where function. Yeah, you might have to go back and take a look at this. Remember, after this week is over, so next week, the week of the 7th, the following week, the week of the 14th, I'm not lecturing at all. That's lab time. I'll be on every day. If you have questions, I'll be there for you to bounce them off of me. But it's just that you're having basically 2 weeks to try to get this stuff done. All right. On the search form, when the user clicks the search button, a link search is performed using both the book name and the book ISBN. So when you search, okay. Now I talked already to Mr. Gudmested. This Mr. Smith wrote this, I think, and Mr. Smith, he was only here for 2 or 3 years. The guy's brilliant. All right, he went back into the corporate world, but these should all be a different ISBN. These should all be a different title. These should be the same. These would probably all be different as well. So when I show you mine, it'll look different than this one. All right, I'm just going to leave it at that. On the search form, after the search button is clicked, the correct result data should be returned and displayed. That's this, all the stuff that's in here. If more than 5 results were returned, you should implement paging. And if you say, I don't know what that means, we're going to look at that when we go into the stuff for the rest of the week. All right. Now it says there, any search results in less than 5 books should disable or hide the paging controls. It says use the link, skip, and take. Just look those up. They're really and truly not that difficult. When the details button is clicked for a book, a form detail thing is displayed, and that's the one I just showed you. That's got all this information on it. That's this. Reviews to a book. So if they come in here and they click submit, either you'll put it at the bottom or at the top. It doesn't matter. You do up to you. All right. So you can put in a new review. It should implement the book class as given in the UML diagram. Well, that's pretty simple, really. There's the book class. So what do you have in here? You've got an empty constructor. The way this is set up, they're all public fields, and they're all capitalized. So ISBN string, author name string, book name string, publish year int, reviews. Notice it's a list of type review, which is down here. All right, and an image. You may have to do a little bit of research on this. All right. This is a child of this. So review is a child of book. And that's why you've got reviews up here and it's down here. That should have really said, yeah, that can say reviews because this is a list of reviews. So that's down there. All right. So you must implement. So notice how many points these are worth. Right here, the whole thing is worth 200 points. And when we break it down, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's 75 and 35. So out of the 200 points, 110 of the 200 points, so 55% is right here on your screen right now. You must be able to add new reviews. You must implement the book class. You must implement the review class. You must implement the search form class. You must implement the details form as shown in the UML diagram. And then the stuff that we've always been doing, such as splash screen. Now you should be able to use a menu. I want this thing to look professional. This is something that should definitely go into your e-portfolio. Again, the app should have a professional look and feel in it. Don't help screen. It can be as simple or as complex as you want it to be. You can make it another form. You can make it a big message box inside of a form. It doesn't matter. Each form should have a title on it. All right. In other words, for each form, I didn't give this one a title, but it should have had one. Ooh, I wonder if I ran the right. Let's see once. Good. It's all working still. Good deal. All right. So jumping back, sorry about that. Just wanted to double check. All right. This last thing, professional look and feel. It's kind of a catch-all type of thing. All right. Make sure for each form that you create, an accept button is set, a cancel button is set, the start button is set, and even though it doesn't show it in here, the tab order should be set. All right. This meant basically I was just going to explain it in class. All right. And it's due midnight, 2 weeks from tomorrow. All right. As always, if you have any questions, please email me with them. All right. If you are turning in late work and you want to make sure that I grade it, send me an email after you put it in there. After you put it and update your repo, just send me an email and let me know what you did. That's all I'm asking. All right. And again, as always, jpscott@rankin.edu. This week is going to be a little different. Last two things I want to tell you. First, let me go and grab this. I'm going to get rid of that. No, this is the one I think I've been working on. So let me look. File, save all, because this one has some form text in it. It does. That's what I wrote this morning. And I'm going to come in here again, try just typing in select star from states, hit enter. Now, if I hit escape, it clears. That didn't clear, which is weird. This is not clearing though. All right. So let's fix that. It's because I removed that. All right. So I got to say LBL number of records dot text equals 0. TXT query dot text equals the empty string. TXT query dot focus. Make sure I didn't break anything. All right, good. It's all working. So hit enter. There's my records. There's my query. There's my results. If I hit escape or I hit clear, that's now clearing. That's clearing, and that's set back to 0. All right, so the only thing I did not do, let me do one last file, save all on here. Close this. This was my SQL query tester right there. I'm going to right mouse click. All right, and it's SQL Server Tester App. I hope that's what I called it. So let me come in here. And as always, do my get init, my get add dot, my get commit -m SQL Server query tester done in class Monday 7/31. All right, so again, it was SQL Server Tester. Guess it's going to have to be called solution. Okay, so let's go into GitHub. Let's just create a new repository. Maybe I didn't do it before. And it should be SQL Server Tester Solution. I'm the owner. Says it's available. Create it. Bring this up. Bring that in here. And refresh. There it is, just done. SQL query tester done in class. So I will put that, save that with my other stuff. So that'll be saved out here. All right. Thanks for watching. I will talk to you tomorrow. And again, tomorrow we will be going over chapter 20 and exercise 20-1. These lectures may take this amount of time. They may take less time. I don't know. You are not responsible for turning in anything in chapters 20, 21, or 22. So the last homework technically you have in here are the written tests for chapters 17, 18, and 19, and the link worksheet. All right. Now you still also have to turn in, of course, the electronic portfolio, which is due 2 weeks from tomorrow. And finally, the final project, which is due 2 weeks from Wednesday. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Until then, have a good day. Thanks.